Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and the old raspy lesbian voice is back once again, and it's actually kind of hurting a little bit, so hopefully it can survive this video. I think it'll be all right, at least I can believe. Anyways, we have plenty to talk about as we did hit the kind of around the short or the medium term target at 11,000 bucks yesterday. Now I want to follow up on that as Bitcoin does come back into the middle of the range. So that is going to set us up for a very interesting weekly close, of which we get to see the CMEs close today, as well as traditional markets, which have been marching on to new all-time highs upon new all-time highs upon new all-time highs, and perhaps even more new all-time highs as well. And I do want to follow up on that as well. Anyways, looking at the Krown Chain application over here, which can be found at app.krownchain.net, I should say that everything's pretty much more or less the same. We did see open interest go up a slight amount with price action decreasing yesterday, which did add efficacy to that move but without a major break of a major range. Really only just kind of amounts for a medium term move right there, which we got. Anyways, looking at Bitcoin dominance, popping up about 0.25%. Not really all that interesting here, but we do still kind of see that bounce that we were speaking about last week come about here. However, still the range holds, and on the fear and greed index, just playing in a 1 point range for the last 3 days, coming down 1 point from 75 to 74. Even with price action coming all the way back down to test around that $11,000 base. I'm curious what the data tab says, if there's anything new to talk about here. I'm going to imagine probably not. Yeah, Bitcoin global funding rate is still coming back down, 0.02%, very, 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 very low, not worth mentioning. And the fear and greed index is still in that range as well. Other than that, I think it's time to get into the actual price action analysis. So we'll go over here and start it off with, actually, let's go to the chart that we've been following, GDAX. So here's kind of the day where I'm actually more of a watcher. I'm like a market voyeur today. I'm not really interested in doing all that much trading, and more importantly, the reason why that is because for throughout this week, Bitcoin's been more or less trending on the medium term time frames rather well, and there's been quite a lot of opportunity right there. But right now, with the weekly close looming overhead, I do put significant importance on where we actually close, especially CMEs today. And if we do get any sort of a close above about 11,500, I still kind of look at this as overall, erring on the long term healthiness side. Now, if we do close below 11,500, especially if it gets led by CMEs later today, which actually that same level would be more or less around the same area. I would be looking for about the same thing to happen on spot coming around Sunday closure at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Anyways, while I did just kind of lay out my overall view on Bitcoin, let's kind of follow up on yesterday's analysis. So I did say that Bitcoin likely to come back down to $11,000 base. We got down to what 11,100 it looks like across multiple exchanges, and that is about close enough in my opinion. I consider this a test back down to this blue box territory right here. Now, what I'm about to say next is perhaps more important than that, and it's this essentially, that I don't really have any biases right now. And when I don't have that, I don't really want to trade. I don't really have anything that I'm massively looking for here, except for essentially the same range that we saw yesterday. And you will see that Bitcoin did have that massive girthy wick to the upside right here, the good old liquidation wick, right? And with that was coming along the side of the traditional markets to open up, and Jerome Powell giving his speech, which everyone was expecting something for. And I just want to speak directly towards this situation because it's something that you will see very likely again, and you see it across major markets typically speaking, and usually you'll see it before like FOMC meetings or whenever like the Fed chair wants to get on TV and talk about something major, like a major announcement. It's like the same shit that you see in cryptocurrency land when ICO number 100 billion kajillion wants to make an announcement of an announcement. Well, in these cases right here, a lot of the time you will see very violent price action going into these sorts of things, and then it will come back into kind of par for the course as to where that price action was kind of hanging around to begin with. And you can see that right here, just hanging around that 11,300-ish region. So now that we have that, realistically it does solidify this range on the medium term time frames, the same range that we had yesterday, between about 11,500 on the top side and 11,300 on the bottom side. If Bitcoin does break down below 11,300 with at the very least a 4-hour delta closure below there, maybe could use a 2-hour. Let's go see what it looks like. If you're going to use a 2-hour, I'd probably use 11,250 instead, just be a little bit more conservative here. Then I would look for an official test all the way down into the bottom side of this blue box. So not just 11,000, it would imply all the way down to about 10,900 or 10,950, depending upon how you draw this one, but somewhere within that range. So it would imply another like $200 move there from what we saw yesterday. And you can also see that, well, on the lower term timeframes, we quite literally are living in a downturn right now. now. And but here's the thing, if this was going to continue to the downside, and this is why I really am hesitant to make like more of a direct call on the lower term timeframes. And that's, and that's just who I am as a trader. We would expect to see some sort of hidden bearish divergence if this was going to put in another lower high right here. Doesn't mean that it can't, but typically you would expect to see something like that. We don't really have that right here. RSI is making lower highs, while price action is making lower highs as well. And you can make it an argument for both sides here. You can say that, well, we are in a downtrend quite literally all the way up to, I believe, a daily right now. Yes, indeed, including a daily, actually, as we did create a downtrend over there by taking out the 11th and 10th of August lows. But as it stands, there's a few other things that I'd really be expecting to see if Bitcoin was going to get immediate continuation of the downside. And with that weekly close looming overhead, I do think that it could very easily have some fuckery back up to that 11,500-ish region, which would essentially, pull it back into the long-term range, or, well, maybe not the long-term range, but the weekly range that we've been looking at, going all the way over here. Let me just quickly and briefly touch on this. I'm talking about this blue box right here, the same blue box that Bitcoin's been getting rejected from ever since January 2018. Officially getting in and closing and doing something different, having a macro change of behavior confirmed as of about 3-4 weeks ago right here on first week of August, and then several confirmations after that with opens and closes within this region. So I would still kind of put weight on that, and as you can see, the bottom end of it comes right in smack dab at 11,500-ish region. So that holds a lot more importance to me than anything else I'm really going to be saying on a video like this today. But we will talk about the lower term time frames, because there are a few things that I would be interested in right here. I understand that some other people, they're gonna be interested in much lower time frames. Some people are gonna be interested in much higher term time frames. Just understand that this is coming from my perspective, which may or may not be relevant to you. I mean, that's all that it comes down to at the end of the day, I suppose. And of course, this is never financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm the furthest thing from it, perhaps, as well. You should definitely not be listening to anyone like me, a stupid idiot on the internet. Yes, okay. So now that we got that out of the way, here's what I'd be looking for. If Bitcoin does close a 2-hour or 4-hour, or sorry, let's say 4-hour dildo below the 200x Benjamin average, which is pretty much right around 11,300, or a 2-hour dildo below 11,250, then yes, I would look for another drive back down around here, and very likely another big bounce from this region as well. And then we get to play the game of, does this bounce get back above 11,500 or not? And well, it's crazy things happen, right? To the upside, it's more or less the same as well. We can actually move this down a smidgen right here. You could even make this a liquid zone if you want to, but I think it's such a small range to begin with that it did, well, we might as well. I mean, it is appropriate here, and it would drive a nice little trade, very likely, I should say, and also kind of rounded up by the 4-hour 200 simple, which has been governing price action for the last day and a half, it looks like. And I'll throw a small blue box in here. This one going to be relevant for the medium term timeframes, and if Bitcoin can close even a 2-hour or 4-hour dildo above this region, about exactly 11,500, then I would look for extension, very quickly to about 11,700. And realistically, at that point, we have to realize that would start to pull in the weekly levels, and we'd still be operating between the 11,500-ish region and the 12,000 region to the top side of the long-term timeframes. So that's really the picture that I want to be painting right now, and I'm very hesitant to get extra bearish in this exact region right here, without seeing that next continuation drive, mostly because I don't see those hidden divergences that I'd expect to see if this is going to put in another local high right here. Doesn't mean that it can't, and in fact, the 4-hour can still kind of rally up, but if anything, we actually do have regular bullish divergence right here between this point on the 25th of August, my time 11 a.m., and in this point on the 27th of August, that was yesterday. So this low and this low right here, and typically we will get a move back up to the 21 based upon that, and we've kind of already gotten that move. I guess you could extend another $50. And perhaps, at that point, it might make some hidden bearish divergence if we do make a higher high on the RSI above this high on the 26th. Could definitely happen, absolutely. But it's not in there just yet. And the 4-hour jewel is somewhat lining up for a buy. I don't typically like these signals like this. I want to see, I want to see the pink and the white. If you have access to the jewel, I want to see them either flat slope or positive slope alongside, the signal that you'd be expecting. So in this case, to the upside, you want them to have a positive slope, to the downside, a negative slope, obviously. but it's that's what I'd be looking for. Could it work out? I've seen them work out in the past, but not as high of a degree as when I see that situation that I just spoke about right there. On top of that, we can also look at momentum plays here too and come up with maybe a slight bias, and it would show that 4-hour momentum does remain to the upside above 11,350. By the way, completely forgot yesterday. So for anyone who hasn't heard, Bally and Pig, who have made these beautiful indicators for myself, including the reverse Stochastic indicator cross, including the reverse RSI cross, also the expected moves and probability cones, all those good things. They're actually offering all of their indicators for some pretty nice packages on their own website. I have a link in the description down below, and I also have a discount code for you as well for 10% with the code Krown, spelled with a capital K, because yeah, should not have a capital K, but but all good. So if you are interested in that, I think they also do give you like the first 7 days free. So if you want to just check it out for yourself and see if it's relevant to you or not, then all good. But these are tools that I use myself every day, and I find that the expected moves especially is very useful for my options trading. So if you are an options trader and you're looking for something like that, I actually have found really groundbreaking for my own game, as it's added a whole new complete layer to how the way that I look at creating ranges and whatnot, and does work for regular spot trading as well. But for myself, I see the biggest fireworks when using it in tandem with options. Anyways, while we are looking at this right here, 4-hour momentum will turn back up to the upside if we do close this next 4-hour dildo in literally 38 seconds above 11,350. So it's looking quite likely right now, as we are trading about $30 higher than that, and that would very likely give us another test back up at the very least to the 21. You can see that I'm having a very muted response here, but we will actually see potential hidden bearish divergence if that does come about. I mean, it's going to be in the cards. We'll have to see in about 10 seconds now, or 15 seconds, I suppose. So we'll actually be able to look at this one together. But for now, for reference, this will actually be kind of cool. So look at the 4-hour RSI right here. If you see this next tick takes out the last high, then potentially we actually could have that in the cards, and that would still be following the downtrend right here. And you could see that we would also be in the process of creating. Let's actually do this right now. We'd be in the process of creating potentially a descending triangle like this. So let's take a look at it right now. Do we actually have that in the cards? No, actually not. So very interesting in fact. But we have another 4-hour dildo to work with now, and so we that whole formula keeps on going onwards and forwards until we either make a new high on this run, or we make a lower high and confirm a lower high alongside of some sort of divergence play as well. But for right now, very, and 10 more varies. Short term, I'd actually be looking for this one to drive slightly higher, like another 50, maybe $100 higher. I'm going to get rid of that trend line for now, but technically speaking, it would be in line with the 21 exponential moving average here. So if that does, if that does start to hold, then yes, we do potentially have a descending triangle in the works there. And we also could come up with a measure move on this one as well. I'll do a very bad drawing right here just to kind of hammer in the point, but it looks something like this, and it would imply a move down to this blue box territory, $11,000 base. So anywhere within there would look about good to me, and that would again be triggered off by the same areas that I spoke about earlier. 4-hour closure below 11,300, 2-hour below 11,250. One of those two things would be good enough for me, and then yes, I would be looking for another breakdown of like another 300, $400 or whatever it ends up being, and then very likely a bounce off this area as well. By the same token, let's keep on going through all the momentum plays here and see if there's anything that's of obvious dispute. And actually, do we see the same thing on 3-hour? No, it's actually nowhere near getting that potential hidden bearish divergence. So again, another potential point in the court for the blue laws, although trend very much under pressure here. Should also note that that 3-hour momentum will turn back up to the upside with any sort of a closure basically above where we are right now in the next hour and 58 minutes and 13 seconds. That would be 11,375. So all these areas are coming in with each other. So if we can get this these next critical closures start to starting to maintain these regions, then I would be looking for another test of 11,500. Looking at the buy hourly, we just closed this one as well. Is there any sort of potential divergences here? Still no, but still needs to take out that $11,500 high. So it could rally all the way up here. And then if we do put in a local high, it will have that same sort of potential divergence play in there. But hey, look at this. 2-hour momentum remains to the upside as long as Bitcoin price action is above 11,200. And 2-hour Joule is more in a bouncy territory. This is nothing resembling a signal, by the way, right here. That's more or less bullshit. But some people will look at that, like the very cavalier Joule traders will look at that as like a bounce territory. I do not look at it like such, but I suppose worth calling out right now. Although on a very low time frame like this and on a very much imperfect read like that, I would not be looking to play that. Looking at the hourly, what do we see here? Do we have you'd expect to see it here if it is going to happen anywhere, because it's going to be the most floaty time frame. And no, actually still no. Bitcoin still making lower highs on RSI. So if anything, next very short-term move probably does come to the upside, and momentum on the hourly will remain to the upside as long as we're above 11,200. So you can see that all these areas are layered with each other. Remember that the hourly and bi-hourly are both coming in around 11,002. The 4-hour is coming in around 11,003, and the 3-hour is coming in around 11,375. So they should all naturally line up with each other around the same areas and be building upon each other, which is kind of what we see right here. So as long as Bitcoin maintains those levels, then technically speaking, short-term momentum will remain to the upside and very likely does beget another test towards 11,500. Does Bitcoin close above 11,500 or not? I don't have an opinion on that, and I don't need an opinion on that to trade this right here, because I'm not going to fucking trade it anyways. Above 11,500, I'll trade. Below 11,300, I'll trade. In this range right here, I'm not interested in trading this one right here. It's too tight, it's too wound up, and we're too close to major high-term time frame expirations. Again, or not expirations, but closures, and also obviously major options expiration today as well, as this one's kind of the last one for the month. So with that said, that's not to say that it's like right or wrong for you. You're morally, everyone's different. Everyone has like a different trading personality. I'm just sharing, again, my sort of perspective on this market, which may or may not be relevant. Who knows? I can't say that for you. Only you can say that for you. Anyways, looking at the 12-hour, we do see that same sort of level holding as well. 12 hours showing that momentum turns to the upside with any sort of a closure above 11,350. So all these areas are very critical, and I'd actually put a lot of importance on this next 12-hour closure. Bitcoin can maintain that level, 11,350. I do think that we will see another another test back up to 11.5. Very likely, we'll have a chance to close above there and initiate another $200 or to $300 move to the top side of the range over the next week. Yes, I do think so. But for right now, it's still got another 7 hours and 55 minutes and 12 seconds left to close. But here's what we'd be looking at on 12-hour Stokes. It would be popping back up with price action. Here's also a counterpoint to that, and a very powerful counterpoint indeed, and that is the halt of your shorts Joule sell signal, which gave you a big sell signal. It actually gave you multiple, but I'd say the very obvious one was right here. This one was a pretty damn good one too on the 8th, or on like early August, but obviously did not get all that much. Giving you, let's actually measure this one out. What did it go from? 12,100 all the way down to 11,100. Actually, $1,000 move, pretty nice. But the big one was this one right here. Didn't get you the ultimate top, but did get you the momentum play, which told you to short right around about 12,100, or a little bit higher than that actually, and has already brought you down a little bit more than $1,000. It looks like for an 8.25% move. Could it be that we have more on top of that? Well, looking at the 12-hour Joules lining up for another sell signal, yeah, it kind of does actually. So I would say this, kind of bringing some things together now. If Bitcoin does close this next 12-hour below 11,350, or especially below 11,300, I would be looking for another test back down to $11,000 base, probably even another $100 lower towards 10.9 region, the bottom side of the blue box that we kind of have right in here for the long term. Now we will obviously have clarity on the situation, today, but for right now, it's too far away for me to really say anything more than that. The only way that I can really come up with, with any sort of a model here is just looking at the low term timeframes, kind of line up their sort of levels in line with the high term timeframes. You can see that they're all coming around in the same area anyways. So it's a little bit diabolical here, but I'm curious if the 10-hour agrees as well. I would imagine it probably does. Obviously in a downtrend here too, so it's hard, hard one to love. But 10-hour will turn momentum back up to the upside with any sort of a closure above literally the same fucking level, 11,375 actually. And we actually do have a slight amount of bullish divergence here as well, which would imply move actually all the way back back up to 11,500. So if I am going off of this, I do think that I do think that that has something to or that's worth talking about. Same thing with 12-hour as well. We have a very slight amount, but it is somewhat present, and the easy move on that one would probably be to the 10 simple on a read like that. The 10-hour looks a little more obvious. So I do think that Bitcoin probably does test up towards 10, or what is it, 11,500. Jesus Christ, man, these numbers are too difficult right now. Let me just make sure that I'm recording. I am, and the microphone's working, so that's good. If I did have to call things right now, very, 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 very short term, I do think that Bitcoin probably works its way back up to 11.5. The question is, does it get a rejection there or not? If it can close above there on at the very least a 2-hour or 4-hour, I'd extend that actually another couple $100 and maybe beyond. That would set up the weekly for a damn good closure, and we get to play out that same range between 11.5 and 12,000. But for right now, it's too early to call these sorts of things. And like I said, with the weekly looming right overhead right now, and also the monthly by extension too, I'm very hesitant to really be looking at like a fucking hourly, a 4-hour, right? How many 4 hours go into a weekly close? Like too many to count. I don't even know. The maths is impossible. I think it'd be like what 500-ish hours or something, or 500-ish dildos maybe. That's probably wrong. Anyways, bad mental math right now. Anyways, see what the daily is looking like as well. And this is very interesting. The daily momentum will turn back up to the upside with any sort of a closure above 11,629. Why is that area interesting? Well, why is that area interesting, might you ask? Well, I'm glad that you asked, sir. Very fucked up conversation. That actually is above yesterday's spike high. So we could also extend that sort of ideology just one step further, I suppose. And I could use both, either a closure above that level or just a wick above yesterday's high at 11,000, basically 11,600, to drive the next medium-term move, not just back to 11.7. I mean, that'd also be a very small move to begin with, but very likely back up to the top side of the range, which I do have still marked off at about $12,000, anywhere between 11.9 and 12,000. I actually like to flip this down and be a little bit more conservative with it, as I do think that's more appropriate in a range like this, with the major implications that it does have. But yes, it would extend this run another basically like $300-400, which I do think is rather important, and obviously set up the weekly for a much more impressive closure. As far as the 2-day and 3-day go, I don't really have too much to say about these things. Momentum is still obviously down. RSI is testing around the neutral zone, which typically does produce a little bit of a bounce. Same thing on 3-day RSI, although 3-day RSI is in free fall right here. Or sorry, not 3-day RSI, but 3-day price action is kind of in a very precarious place. Maybe not free fall. I think that's a little bit too aggressive to say. But remember, we do have bearish divergence present between this point and this point, and typically I'm going to target a move down around the 21 based off that, and that's even below 11,000. So here's the thing, if Bitcoin does break below 11,000 on a daily, or, do we want to say 11,000 or be more conservative and say 10,950, wherever the 55 is right here, then I would still be looking for the same big bad moves to the downside if that were to happen. Very likely Bitcoin does come back down below 10,000 overall, with the bounce along the way at 10.5 right here. Presumptive targets would be somewhere right around the 200 exponential moving average on the daily, which is about 9,600, which is actually in line with the gap currently present on CMEs, right around this region as well. If you do look at that as a as having about $100 premium on price action, which it does, so it would line up with those levels if we did come down to it would actually fill the gap in that exact area. But that's not to say that that's inevitable to happen, right? Or it's not to say that it's not inevitable to happen. It's just the timing of that is a complete X factor. So people who are looking to short just because there's a gap present below, I present to you this. What did you do over here between this gap? To the upside, right? That's supposed to be the good ones, right? Well, it did get filled. Yes, every gap that I'm aware of has gotten filled, especially on Bitcoin. But it did take all the way from early March to late April. So that's multiple months. Same thing over here, although actually this one was pretty damn close. I remember this one from last year in June. Remember this one? Bitcoin then took about 3 to 4 months before it actually filled it again. And it didn't even really bounce off of it either. It just shot the fuck through it. So, these are professional gaps right here, and they typically don't get filled soonish as like the typical ones that you see just from like a weekend of price action or the daily closure on traditional markets. So as it is right now, CMEs actually look a lot more droopy than spot price action for Bitcoin. And looking at the weekly, same areas are implied here, but it does look a little more nasty here too. Yeah, a little, a little bit strange. Anyways, yeah, looking at the daily, this does not look healthy right here. But again, if we take out yesterday's high, I would extend that run probably back up to 11.9 or 12,000 overall. Maybe not on like a straight line, but overall over like the next week or something. Okay, so we beat that horse to dead, whatever. Looking at the Trollinger bands over here, troll-a-low. Well, what do we have? Bouncing off the bottom side Trollinger band, but this is not helpful here in our current stature. It tells us the same things that we already kind of knew. Still this horizontal is very much relevant at the 11,500-ish region. And if we were to close below this bottom side Trollinger band, that would very much imply targets back down to that 10.9-ish region. Yes, and that's currently coming in around where? Around 11,250, which, if you remember from the lower term timeframes, that is relevant for momentum plays as well. And in daily MACD, this is not like the right way to be using the MACD, but typically when you do come like to the zero read right here, you will see some counter trend pressure. So in this case, it would imply a bounce. But right now, histogram is increasing while price action is what? Well, price action decreasing. But do we see anything out of the norm? Maybe not on this time frame. Maybe we have to go to a 12-hour. 12-hour, we do see a little bit of waning momentum here to the downside. Histogram is making slightly higher lows, while Bitcoin price action makes lower lows. So another potential point in the short-term Bulaw's court, and we will see that the 12-hour 20 simple is going to be coming in line with the 11,500-ish area, that critical level right here. So if Bitcoin can get back above it, then that would be more or less good and imply those targets back up to the upside between 11.9 and 12,000 overall. But for right now, as long as it's below, pressure is onto the downside. As long as it has a negative slope, it is hard. It's a hard one to love. A moving average only a mother could love right now. If you do want to be a Bula, of which I'm pretty much not interested in trading this right here. This is not my range. I'd rather sit on the sidelines for something like this. I imagine that we also do see something in the works on historical volatility percentile, and what do you know, on hourly historical volatility percentile, we are getting quite low once again, back into the single digits. So we are very, very likely moving up to going to test the medium term range, high or low. In this case, very likely the high, lining up with momentum today. And then we can also go over and see if anything's formulated on the daily. And we do see a little bit of a contraction phase going on over here as well. This is its own little phase ever since August began, essentially, and it is coming to a critical point, a critical mass, an apex, if you will. In about 2 weeks, but that would suggest that when it's about 75% full, it will break, or at least statistically likely, extremely likely to break, and that would actually be between today and the end of the month on Monday. So let's go over to the monthly here as well and put the whole picture into perspective. And I really want to hammer this one in, because while I have talking about some bearish things on the short, medium, potentially even higher term timeframes as well, this is still going to supersede everything else. And as it stands, the monthly is still in an uptrend. We have higher lows and higher highs. Here's your low, here's your high, here's your higher low. We closed on higher highs. There's a fucking higher high. There's been a lot of people also saying, but Krown, don't we have bearish divergence between this point and this point? Well, you're going to short every fucking continuation drive in your life if you look at it like such, because this is not a confirmed local high as it is. Look, if you do something like that, you're going to short every continuation drive like you see out of 2015 all the way to 2018 right here, just because price action is quite literally in a continuation phase. You cannot fucking compare. If you're looking at divergences, you cannot compare a local high with a not local high. And in this case right here, is this confirmed as a local high? Fuck no, it's not. There's nothing resembling a local high right here. It would not even be I would be very unlikely to happen on this month. It could happen on the next month, September. How would it happen on the next September month, might you ask? We'd have to set in something resembling a reversal right here. Doji could work as it is right now. That could work, definitely. And then if we took out the low of this one, there you go. There's your reversal. And then yes, our target moves back down towards, well, like 8,500 or 9,000. So there you go. I could very easily get bearish for another couple $1,000 move to the downside. Absolutely. But is that in the cards right now? No. Is that what momentum oscillators suggest right now? Also no. Looking at monthly Stokes, nice and erect to the upside after reaction to the bearish control zone. Usually a pretty damn good read. Monthly Joule giving you a hot or long signal. Not enough information here, historically speaking, but interesting nonetheless. And monthly RSI is constructive here again. And if you are going to be looking for bearish divergence, you don't see it in the fucking neutral zone to begin with. I mean, very, very rarely. Like the probability of those playing out, in my experience, is probably less than 10%, maybe even less than 5% in this zone. You want to see it in the around the critical zone for the best ones, or around the top side of the bullish control zone in the case of bearish divergence, and same thing vice versa for the downside in the case of bullish divergence. But it's right now we're kind of smack dab right in the middle there. And remember that we're not just closing a monthly at the end of this month. We're also closing a bi-monthly as well. And the bi-monthly is looking nice and girthy. It does have a massive, massive range here, but any sort of a close above 10,800 is going to be considered continuation, as well as we will have the same thing set in place as we see on the monthly, just confirmed on an even higher term time frame, which is more important, obviously, as well. Let me just make sure that this is good to go over here. Okay, yes, indeed it is. But overall, looking at this, there's your low, there's your high, there's your higher low, and if we close above 10,800, that's quite literally going to produce a higher high by definition. So it would be continuation, and it would imply a target, long term, not today, not tomorrow, not even maybe next month, but over the long term, probably 3 to 6 months, out on a time frame like this, a move back up to test around this closure in December 2018. Around high 13,000s, maybe 14,000, we'll just say that. And momentum oscillators, again, agree with that as well. Bi-monthly Stokes looking nice and erect. Bi-monthly RSI regaining the exponential, and will maintain above the exponential as long as we close above about, especially like 10,500, I believe. And actually would even get into the bullish control zone if we close this bi-monthly above 11,800. Remember, all these are coming in 3 days. Monday is the last trading day of the month. So that's what I'd be looking for. Obviously, a lot can happen in about 3-4 days of trading. That's fucking eternity. We've seen definitely crazier moves in like $1,000, each way in that amount of time frame. But overall, that's what I really have the importance on right now, and why I'm very hesitant to say anything more direct in the lower term time frames as it is, because I just don't think it's appropriate. Now let's go over to check out traditional markets really quick. Are they making new all-time highs? Holy fuck! You could be trading XYZ shit chain, or you could just have bought traditional markets, pretty much any major bourse in traditional markets, ever since 2009, and straight to the goddamn moon. Let's see, where is this one going right now? Well, we did say new all-time highs today, or this last week, all throughout this week basically, and I'd still be saying this one probably does reach for the ultimate target. I mean, maybe it's not even the ultimate target, but at least the long-term target that we had breaking out of this area right here towards 12,150 and a quarter. It's the 3.618 Fibonacci extension. It also did line up with some of our probability panels over here when we were looking at this one the other day, and I'm curious if it still kind of aligns with it. It naturally will shift as time goes along, but the first deviation is actually right around 12,150. Second is around 12,400. Third is 12,600. I'm curious if those line up with any of the higher extensions. Yeah, for the third deviation lines up with the 4.236 extension here. So we're getting into like very frothy territory, but I do still think that there's at least another leg up. And as you've seen over the last like few weeks, I've been taking this very, very slowly here, just calling it day by day, and just basically, as long as we have continuation, I'm happy to be more bullish on this one. And I'd still be using 11,700 as a pivot to the downside. So this is where things get crazy here though, because the range is big. So if you are taking trades within this region, where do you manage risk? That's why I wouldn't trade this region, because I'd be managing risk down here, and that's too far away for me to really feel comfortable. Looking at E-mini futures for SPY, do we have new all-time highs? Oh, what the fuck? I thought that crypto only moons, except for the last 3 years. But what is this? Krown? Is this manipulation? No, it's a girthy green dildo actually, and it's going straight down your throat. So I hope you enjoy. And if you're riding this girthy green dildo, I salute you, sir. There you go. Anyways, I guess long term, I guess I have this target up here. I don't feel all that comfortable about it. I wouldn't necessarily feel too compelled to trade for it. But 3,700 is your next major area. I'm curious if that lines up with one of the standard deviations over here on the daily too. And does it? 3,700 was the magical area, and it does actually. That's a third standard deviation to the top side. very, 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 very unlikely that that it does close above there today. Obviously, that will change around as more days transact. But for right now, still Bula-ish, I suppose. And I'll still be looking for this one to close on new all-time highs today. Or very likely at least. And same thing here as NASDAQ. I'd be managing risk below 3,400. That's really fucking far away from current price action. So I would not be interested in this. Daily Jewel did give you a haughtier long signal, or even another buy signal. This is very, very aggressive right here. I would this is cause for caution right now. Daily RSI will not be in the midst of making any bearish divergence here. I'd have to say another leg up here, as well as NASDAQ, and then maybe and then we probably do play out a medium term pullback, and then probably crawl its way up a little bit higher, then start to create some divergence. But I would not be calling any major highs on any major markets until we have at the very least bearish divergence on a fucking weekly, and even on a daily right now. For our perspective, there is no bearish divergence here. So there you go. Anyways, Microsoft headed up to our, oh, nice. Hey, sweet. It almost hit my 230 target. Not bad. Not bad at all. Is that close enough right there? I think it is kind of close enough. Maybe gets another swipe up to 233 even. It did get up to 231 and 14 cents yesterday. That's pretty fucking close. How exact you want to be, I don't know. But I'd probably be looking for this one to make to make another stab higher in lieu with the rest of the markets, as most things look like they want to try higher overall. Apple, interesting here as well. It's starting to really show signs of exhaustion, and I do believe that the run is probably nearing an end. But I would still allow for. I would still allow for. It's like, oh my God, Krown, go fuck yourself. Jesus, man. Sorry, I have to call myself out sometimes, and please, you be the one to call me out as well if you hear me saying dumb shit like that. It really actually does rub me the wrong way. I still think 525 is possible here in this current environment, but I do think that it puts in a major high somewhere within this region between 500 and 525 over the next couple months. Again, starting to line up more and more with election time. Tesla up to oh my God, we did hit the 220. The 2250 target. We said new all-time highs on this one yesterday. We got new all-time highs on this one. Do I think that it'll extend to 2400? Potentially yes, but again, same thing here as I just looked at on Apple. I'm starting to really look for tops within this region once again. Depending upon how the weekly closes, which for right now looks pretty damn good. I'd probably even be looking for a new high coming into next week as well. This is still good as it is. The only way that I kind of not be impressed by not that I not be impressed, but that I'd be cautious on this one is if it closed below 2100 today for the weekly. We'll still get euro dollar marching its way back up to 118.5. It's going to grind out this blue box a little bit more. Can you do it, Mr. Euro dollar? I hope not, actually, because most of my money's in dollars. Go fuck yourself, euro dollar. Come down, you fuck. That's the way to get price action to do what you want. Sweet talk it. Come down, you fuck. Yes, because price action not only understands English, but it also speaks English, and it will respond to you inanimately. So looking at this right here, I still do think that it's more likely that it does grind this area out, maybe even test this area a couple more times, which it just did actually to 119. But as long as we're closing weekly dildos below 119.5, I do think that this one just creates a high over here over the next month or two. Triple Qs, new all-time highs. UKX, no, bad, coming back down. Sorry, English people, sorry, British people, but you guys got a shitcoin for your major Boris, and probably coming back down to 58.80. What about Nifty? How about one for the Indians out there? Oh, new highs on the run, and I believe that we actually hit the target that I laid out. I think I said actually 11,700 or 750. So we're right about there. We're kind of eating into the easier part of this, but golden cross on this, and overall an uptrend starting to look like a runaway too. I do think that short term it makes a run for 11.7 ish region, we'll call it. Probably short term pullback from there, but overall in line with the rest of the world markets, probably does try higher. Everything else make new all-time highs. Why not let India join the party too? The monthly looks pretty damn good coming into closure. I still want to see it on Monday officially, but if it closes anything like this coming into Monday, I'd be looking for actually a retest of 12,000 and beyond, very likely. What else do we want to look at? What about NYA? Do we have new highs on this run? We do. That actually looks quite like Nifty, doesn't it? And I'd be looking for the same sort of thing, 13,300-ish region, medium term. Let's see how the monthly lines up after that. Russell 2000, trying to consolidate at a high level here. I'd give it the benefit of the doubt in this current environment and say it's kind of the same thing. Still looking at 1600 plus, and with special importance on the monthly closure on Monday. What about gold? Is gold pulling through here too? Gold looks very Bitcoin-ish, as you can see. It does look like it's trying to set in a base along this 1900 support. I don't really have anything to say here that I haven't already said, and it's very similar chart to Bitcoin. Below here, below 1910 on a daily closure, it extend moves down to probably this area right here, 1850. Probably for a short-term bounce, and then 1820 for a bigger bounce. By the same token to the upside, I'll be using this little pivot point right here, yesterday's open at 1950, to denote continuation back up around this high, somewhere around like $2,000, and then we can talk about if this one's ready to go more or less. But for now, technically does have a downtrend in place. See how the monthly is looking to shape up. This would look a little bit toppy, to be fair, a little bit toppy, sloppy, and I would be cautious on this one, but still, a few days left to go until the closure, so it's a little bit too early to judge, I suppose. Oh, Kitchens. Hello, Kitchens. Would you like to get your fucking forks out? Take her away, you goddamn shitcoin police, you dishcoin police. We need dishcoin for Elsa. Jesus, man. Anyways, what else do we want to say here? Oh, it's already 40 minutes into this video. You've been listening to old raspy lesbian voice for too long, my friend, but it's fine because I appreciate you. I actually do. Okay, so going back on over here, let's go look at probabilities for Bitcoin. Pretty much the same areas as yesterday, actually. I'm going to use 11.5 to the upside. I'm going to use 11.250 to the downside. And let's see what this one populates. Where's my probabilities? There they are. All right, probabilities. Show me the way. Guide my red or green dildos, please. 11.5 to the upside. Let's do 11.250 to the downside. All right. Downside is favored now. So if you remember yesterday that the upside was favored and Bitcoin failed to get above the critical levels, now the probabilities switch on to the downside once again. Ever so slightly, 43.73% probability for the downside, just under 36% probability for the upside. This is going to be further exacerbated by the 12-hour, showing 32% to the upside versus just under 41% to the downside. Rings are flat here, and on the daily, rings are angled downwards. So bears do have a move here. Or they do have the ball in their court, I suppose you could say, as the saying goes. But still, I'd be using overall the same sort of range that I've been kind of denoting for the last few days, or the last day, I suppose. You could actually make a slight blue box right here too. 4-hour or 2-hour, or case 4-hour dildo closure below 11,300 or a 2-hour below 11,250. I'd be looking for another drive back down here, another $300, $400 continuation drive. By the same token, anywhere above, a 2-hour or 4-hour dildo closure above 11.5. I would actually extend targets back up to 11.7 very quickly, and then overall, I do think that Bitcoin would probably test back up towards 11.9 to 12,000. Maybe into the next week. But right now, I want to reiterate the importance of the daily and weekly closure coming up today. The weekly closure for CMEs, critical to get back above 11.5. The daily closure for Bitcoin, critical to, well, just not break down, essentially, not break down below that 11.3 region. So keep all those areas in mind. I hope that this video serves you well, as I feel like this one was a lot more theory based rather than anything else. But that's kind of the truth of the matter right now. I want to be very direct when I don't really feel like there's much for me to do, when I don't feel like there's not a huge edge to have. I'll just kind of watch and I'll have my levels set out. Of course, I'll trade on the periphery, if it's warranted, if it gets there. But I'm not really interested in trading in like a $200 range that we have right now, when very high term time frame closures are coming about quite literally in today and then on Monday. So with that said, I'd like to wish everyone well once again. I'd like to wish you the best into this nice Friday, where you get absolutely no risk on the weekend because you are a Bitcoin trader very likely. Until next time, take care and goodbye.